All right, joining us now on Drive the Lane. Welcome back, Joshua Perry, Big Ten analyst for Big Ten Network. Not the best circumstances to have you on, but we are happy to have you here nonetheless. Welcome back to the show.
I'm glad to be back again. Not glad about these circumstances, but I love hanging out with you two.
Well, we appreciate that. Obviously, this is some sort of an emergency podcast, right? Because me and Andrew have been off the scene for a bit. We were doing stuff with TBT, and then sports kind of just disappeared, right? So there was no place for us to really have a voice, but now all of a sudden there is. In case those who are listening don't know, the Big Ten chose to postpone their season today. JP, your initial thoughts on that?
It's wild. It is absolutely crazy. And talk kind of intensified over the weekend. So you had that amount of time to process it, but I don't think that I didn't think it would materialize the way that it did. And the reality of the situation is, we've got all kind of different information, and I think people are very, very divided on the coronavirus and our response and how we should continue to progress through it. My personal opinion is we can all be frustrated and we can be angry, and that's a natural response because college football is an institution in America. But we've had months on top of months on top of months to figure out how the hell we were going to get to this point, and we still fumbled it. And you had two of the major conferences, Power 5 conferences, go ahead and pull the plug. You've got three of them that are kind of holding out and waiting to make a decision. I've got kind of thoughts on how that's all going to play out. But the reality of the situation, I'm disappointed. A lot of fans are disappointed, but there are a lot of young men who worked their ass off for basically the entirety of their life. They were kicked off of campus earlier this year. They were brought back in May. They continued to grind and work and do all the things they needed to do. They socially distanced. They wore masks. They took tests, 2-3 times a week to make sure that they were healthy, just to get to this point where they were in training camp and the rug was pulled from underneath them. So I couldn't imagine what they're feeling right now. I know my level of frustration and anger, and they're probably 10 times higher than what I am right now.
Yeah, I mean, we have just 1,000 questions for you, but kind of the first thing that's on my mind, I see season postponed. How much do you think that is true versus the season really being canceled?
It's canceled, 100% canceled. And the reality of the situation, too, is when they talk about playing in the spring, the language that they're even using right now is so non-committal. As if we can get a season in the spring, and we're hopeful that we'll get a season. We're hopeful that we'll have rapid tests and different protocols and all that kind of stuff. And for me, hope is not it's not a game plan. Hope is not a plan. Hope is something that you have when you go to ask a girl out and you know that she's way out of your league. When you are in charge of running college football, when you are in charge of returning America to normalcy, you don't hope, you plan. And so that's where I'm kind of skeptical on the spring. Reality situation with the spring, too. I've said reality situation like 4 or 5 times, but this is super real right now. This situation for the spring is dicey, too, because you have roster management issues. You have logistics in terms of playing 2 seasons in 1 calendar year. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think that a spring season actually matters because nobody's walking around with the spring 2021 national championship shirt on. Everybody's going to be worried about what happens next fall. And so I'm just having a lot of trouble getting there. Postponed really means canceled. And reality for me, I'll see you in the fall.
What I can't wrap my mind around is the thought of a spring season as an athlete, from the athlete's perspective, is number one, how do you expect them to play a full season and then turn around and prepare for the next season? Okay, that's not fair. Number two, how are they going to have 170 guys on the roster? That's from my perspective, that's the first thing that I think about when I hear spring season.
And you have to do some funny math. Like there's going to have to be a rule where anybody who would have exhausted their eligibility can come back, and you can also have incoming freshmen. And then, instead of, say, on a typical year, 20 guys leave the roster, you would have 40 guys exit this next season, and then you just don't replenish those scholarships for all 40. You just give them, to where they can get back to their 85 limit, which is going to be crazy mathematics. But then you have guys who also enroll early every single year, and like half of Ohio State's classes have been doing that in the last handful of years. So when you get these freshmen on campus that should have still been high school seniors, are you allowing them to participate in practice? Are these guys eligible to play in their first season while not exhausting one of their 4 or one of their 5 years of eligibility? Like, these are all legitimate questions we have to answer too. I just think there are too many obstacles, plus the fact of the matter of, do we actually get to a place where the coronavirus is better? Or are we still asking ourselves the same questions in the spring? I can't answer that for you right now. Nobody can answer that. I don't have a crystal ball. So I just think there are so many obstacles, and it's optimistic to think that we'll get there. I just don't think it's realistic.
Another thing that seems really like it's in muddy water and kind of just sucks for these guys who did it. Schools like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin that have a lot of juniors, now seniors, that really are going to regret not declaring for the NFL when they could have. There's a bunch of Buckeyes that would have gone second, third, fourth round this year, and they came back hoping they can be first rounders.
Sure.
I mean, obviously there's nothing you could do about that now, but how do you think those kids are feeling right now?
It's tough. It's absolutely tough. I mean, I'm thinking about Shaun Wade specifically. He was a guy who people had as a second-round draft pick, might have been able to sneak into the first. I mean, we saw Damon Arnett go in the first round, number 20 overall. And if you would ask people, some of them probably would have thought that Shaun Wade was a little bit of a better defensive back. So, I mean, reality situation for him is you come back and you expect that you're going to be able to play and elevate your draft stock. And now you're probably in the same position to where you could have just left. And I think a big push for this we want to play movement out of some of the big names in college football and big name programs specifically is that these athletes felt like they were in contention for a national championship. You know, you're not seeing Purdue hashtagging we want to play the same way you're seeing Ohio State, because Purdue's not going to win a conference championship. They're not going to win a national championship. That's why you saw Rondale Moore leave Purdue. That's why you saw Rashad Bateman, who left Minnesota. Micah Parsons, one of the best linebackers that came through the Big Ten in a long time, left Penn State. And you felt like they might have had a chance to challenge Ohio State, but they truly weren't a national contender. And so for these guys who felt like Justin Fields, you can win a Heisman Trophy, Ohio State, you can be back in the playoff, potentially playing for a national championship this year, to have that all taken away has got to be a tough pill to swallow.
Joey, I know you got a question, but before you go, while we're talking about players coming and going, recruiting-wise, if the Big Ten doesn't play and the SEC plays, do you think there's people out there that are going to say they have football on their mind, they're going to make sure I'm on the field?
It might be over with. And it's a very drastic reaction. I think Ohio State can protect itself a little bit just because of the track record. Like, you know, even though they're not playing this year, all these things remain the same. It's a great degree, but guys go to the league. They compete for titles year in, year out. And so you can at least, if you're Ryan Day, you can try to salvage what's going on by saying, you know, whatever you think about canceling football this year, our track record speaks for itself in every other year. And that'll help. But the reality is for Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Georgia, Florida, all those teams, they're going to come into those kids' living rooms and say, Big Ten doesn't care about football the way that we do. You know, they're not invested in football the way that we are. And when you're 17 years old and you're hearing that, you're probably going to be swayed by some of that conversation, although I think it's a little bit unfair and a mischaracterization. But if we get to a point where you have some conferences playing in the Big Ten sitting on the sidelines, I think it really, really crushes them in terms of their ability to bring talent in.
It's funny that you say that and phrase it that way, because I was under the impression that that's just an overreaction, like a super hot take. But if you're saying it, you know, I believe you. But I don't know. If you're being recruited, if you're 17 years old, like you said, you're thinking, I don't want to go to Ohio State. I don't care how many players they've sent to the league. Alabama cares more about football. That's what you're thinking?
Yeah, no, and I'm with you. I think it's an overreaction, but for the 17-year-old, you can't see through it sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, their brains aren't developed the same way as a grown adult. And we have grown adults who are making this overreaction right now. And I think that's part of the problem is nobody's really taken the time. I'm not going to say nobody, but a lot of college football fans haven't taken the time to sit back and press pause and really digest what's going on here. And this is going like, you know, way off script, but like there are a lot of miserable people, hate their job, they can't stand their wife, they don't like the house that they live in, they can't stand their car, their dog pees on the carpet, and their one thing that they get out of life is 12 Saturdays a year where they get to watch their favorite team compete. And then you take that away from them and it's doomsday. And if you open up social media, it's like, this is the worst thing that ever happened. Not 160,000 people have died during this pandemic here in America. It's the fact that they can't watch their team play football this fall. And so, yes, everything right now to me is an overreaction, and we're playing the worst case scenarios right now. And I think in a month, the other Power 5 conferences will be pulling the plug. I believe that a lot of what's going on right now out of Power 5 commissioners is performance. When you listen to Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, he says, we're going to do everything that we can to exhaust all of our resources in trying to play football. And then in the same statement, he says, I don't know if we'll be able to play. So if he felt like there was going to be a season, he would have said, I think we can play football. It's going to happen. But he's saying we're going to exhaust all of our resources, but I'm not sure if we can play, which means that it's probably on the more they're not playing side than that they are playing side. So to me, what that means is all of the exhausting resources, it's a performance. We saw all the conversation. Oh, Ohio State, Ryan Day, we're going to try to find anybody that we can schedule if they don't play. Brian Hartline's quote tweeting Taraja Mitchell talking about let's go to the SEC. That was all performance. That was never a realistic situation. None of that was ever real. And they probably knew that going in. I'm not trying to disparage any of these people, but I just feel like there's so much in terms of smoke screens and performance and trying to seem like we're doing as much as possible. And I think the writing is truly on the wall. It has been, because we've been in this same damn pandemic for months and months and months since they canceled the NCAA tournament. Not a lot has changed. And so for me, people are going to say, oh, the SEC, they care about football because they're waiting it out. And they're literally just waiting it out, but they're going to do the same thing, and they probably know it right now.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that, and I think I know the answer, do you think that the commissioners, the conferences, however you want to phrase it, do you think they're doing this because it's a safety issue or to cover their asses?
Ooh. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And I will say that they care about the well-being of the athletes in terms of they want to make sure that the guys come through, nothing catastrophic happens, and they can leave. So from that regard, it is safety. But again, if it was really safety, I feel like you could have pulled the plug months ago. Right. Not months ago, but you could have pulled the plug and you would have had a legitimate reason. I feel like if it was really about safety, college campuses wouldn't be filling with students. And not to get into all the whatever about it, but it seems a little bit dangerous considering where we are in the stage of the pandemic right now. And when players started organizing and they started calling for transparency and third-party independent reviews and liability insurance for any illnesses related to COVID and those types of things, I think it scared the piss out of university presidents. I think it scared the piss out of conference commissioners. And that power that the student athletes brought to that situation, even the ones who were with the We Want to Play movement, they still had it itemized out there that they wanted universal standards. They wanted to be covered in terms of some of the liability, and they wanted to have an official organization. Power brokers ain't like that. And so I feel like that was where the writing was really on the wall.
So what confuses me so much, and we touched on this briefly before we even started talking, what was up with that schedule announcement? People getting fired up that we were 3.5 weeks away from Ohio State scoring 100 on Illinois. What is the point? It's not like it was 4 weeks before they canceled. It was literally like a week and a half ago. A week ago. What's up with that?
It was 6 days ago. And Kevin Warren, the conference commissioner, who a lot of people are really frustrated with right now, I actually have a ton of respect for him. I think he's really, really good, and he's caught in a situation where we'll probably look back and be a little bit kinder to him. But I wouldn't want to have his job right now, but that's why they pay him a lot of money. But he said that the medical information that came through regarding some of the heart conditions that players have gotten after being diagnosed with COVID. And I think they said there was a report that came out that 10 players had this specific heart condition. I think that was enough to really shake them to their core. But outside of that, none of the medical information really changed. What changed was the tone of the student athletes, where the first group, the Big Ten United group that came out, was really pointed in some of their demands, and I think that scared them. And then even, like I said, the players who wanted to play had some demands that I don't think the power brokers really liked. But I also picked up on the tone of the schedule release, which I feel like was lost on a lot of Big Ten fans. Kevin Warren, the day the schedule was released, basically said, if we play college football, this is what the schedule looks like. And they built in 6 weeks of flexibility. And he said, we can kick it back to here. But this is all dependent on us actually getting to the starting point. And then even when Gene Smith was asked about the schedule, his tone was, if we can do this, then this is what it's going to look like. And 10 days before the schedule was released, Gene Smith was on Columbus radio, and he was talking about how he was still apprehensive about taking that next step toward a full contact, full padded training camp. This was 10 days before they were supposed to start training camp. He was still apprehensive. So I think there was more caution than optimism surrounding the Big Ten schedule and returning to play. But that was lost on a ton of Big Ten fans because all they were seeing was, oh, training camp is getting ready to start. And, oh, this is what the schedule is going to look like. And they took into consideration none of the language around it and none of the tone.
I don't even want to ask this question. It's a little bit of a different question. But have we seen the last of Justin Fields at Ohio State?
Yeah, probably. I just can't see a guy playing in the spring. I wouldn't advise. If I were an advisor for anybody college football who was draft eligible and was a high predicted high draft pick, I would advise them to bounce. You can't play in the spring and turn around and play an NFL season in the fall. And it's a shame for Ohio State fans. You saw Justin Fields for 1 year, and for 1 year he was magnificent. He was amazing. And you were waiting to see him level up again this year, and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of Ohio State fans have had an up and down last couple weeks. All of a sudden, there were going to be 20,000 fans in the stadium, or 20%. Then all of a sudden, the season was opening in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, the Michigan game was going to be a random weekend in October, not the last. Now there's no more Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Now people are like I saw a tweet today that said the Big Ten's reign is over. Ryan Day will be in the NFL by 2021. Yeah. Ohio State's had their last recruit.
So reactions.
Yeah, my question to you is, what's the dumbest thing you've seen on social media today as a reaction to all this?
It's basically all in line with that. And it's like even to the point where like I saw a couple people hashtagging about firing Gene Smith. He was one of the best athletic directors in all of college football. So you're just stupid if you think that any of this. And they're like, oh well, he's not even trying to play a fall season. Like I said, nobody's going to be playing, buddy. The writing's on the wall. It was never feasible for them to go and try to play in any other conference. And none of these conferences are going to be playing anyway. And then I guess the other thing too, like all these conversations are lacking nuance. And that's what's really pissing me off about it. Like, I don't think I saw one tweet today and it was great because it said, you can be mad that college football is not going to play and you can want it to be played. Like me, I get paid during college football season. That's why I want it. But I should also be able to admit that I'm not a doctor. I don't know. And the doctors don't even know because this is so new to everybody. But we've lost that nuance. We've lost the nuance of it's not Gene Smith's fault and it's not Kevin Warren, the conference commissioner's fault. Like he's the guy making all the statements. But you've got 14 presidents or chancellors of these institutions. Some of them have medical backgrounds. And these people are the ones having the conversations and making the votes. So lost in all of this conversation is, what do some of these people who run these universities, some of them who have actively worked in the medical field and voted against the season, why aren't we getting quotes from them so we can understand what's going on? And so, like, yeah, there's been a lot of stupidity, But I think overall, and this is like anything else, COVID is apparently a liberal conservative talking point nowadays. But when we get to that point, nuance doesn't exist anymore, and we just get stupid, dumb, hot takes.
It all comes back to the same thing we started with, when if you wanted a football season so bad, you should have just stayed in your house and put a mask on, and we would have had no problems. But instead, it's those same people that are the ones complaining that we're not going to have a season. It's like, well, you screwed it up, not the commissioner.
Yeah.
So look at yourself in the mirror and figure out what you're going to do on Saturdays now.
And that's the deal too. It's like I'm sitting here frustrated because I stayed in my house when I needed to. When I went out, I wore my mask. I stayed away from people. I didn't shake hands. And I'm sitting here like, damn, I did all of that because I was trying to get to a certain place in society where we could at least try to have a normal fall. And everybody else is sitting back, oh, you know, these people are soft and they caved into the hysteria, the hysteria and the panic and the fear porn and all this, that, and the third. And it's like, okay, let me take a step back here. Let me take a deep breath. I'm going to defer not to the guy on Twitter who's making graphs on Excel. I'm going to defer to the doctors who are saying put a damn mask on. And that's where it's like, whew, we are really tripping. And I hope that by time 2021 rolls around that we're not dealing with the same stupidity.
I just remember, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, my dad said the greatest thing about this whole thing right at the beginning. He said, would you rather say, man, how silly were we to be so concerned and so scared and did everything we could so that it ended fast? Wouldn't you rather look back and say that versus the opposite of, man, I wish we took it more seriously? In one scenario, there's a football season, and in one scenario, it's what we're living in right now. So
the craziest part about what you're saying, because I agree 100%. Like, I would rather sit back and say, oh man, we did too much and we overreacted. There are people who literally think, in a place where we just canceled college football in the Big Ten, they literally think that we overreacted. I want people to just consume that really quick. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to stop their life and you can't live whatever, but like, stay away from people, wash your hands. If you don't need to go out, don't go out and wear a mask. Like, it's pretty simple. And the experts are telling you wear a mask and this thing is gone in 4 months. I just couldn't imagine being so stupid and saying, well, now I've got freedom and I don't want to wear it. Like, okay.
Yeah, I can't breathe. I can barely talk.
Yeah.
Right.
JP, I'm going to compliment you and then challenge you here.
Okay.
All right.
Challenge me.
So first is the compliment. You know, we had you on about a year ago, and we kind of just talked a little bit about your career at Ohio State, asked you a couple things about the Big Ten. In the last year, man, you have just absolutely killed it, taking your career to the next step. You are now – we're bringing you on because you're the best guy to come on to talk about this, not because you're a former Ohio State player, because you actually get it, and you're smart, and you're the point guy on this for Big Ten, which is what it seems like. So hats off to you for that.
Appreciate it.
But my challenge to you –
okay.
Find me a silver lining in this.
So here's the silver lining, and this is definitely a challenge to come up with. But I think that, and I'm saying this from a scope of my personal life here lately, because this is not the first, put in air quotes, tragedy that I've experienced recently. There have been a number of things that just haven't lined up, or like, for example, my fiance's like best friend just got an ATV accident. She's not doing very well. So we're dealing with that loss and that tragedy. And then, you know, we had some plans for our personal life that we're going to have to put on hold just because, you know, I'm going to be out of a job essentially this fall. And so in these times where things don't go the way that we want them to, and where we had expectations now that have fallen short, it is incumbent upon us to be reflective and to really challenge ourselves and ask, why are we here and what can we do next time? And so, like, for the grief thing that Madison and I are going through with the friend, there's not a lot that we can do to control that situation, but what we can do is to try to be a light to other people who are grieving as well. And so that is my challenge. And I'm trying to be a light for her because she's taking it really hard. So that's number one. That's what I can do differently, is I can be positive because she's struggling. But when we look at this football thing, what did we do to get here? How are we going to make sure we don't get here again? And then what are on the Saturdays that we would have spent all day watching ESPN coverage, watching Big Ten coverage, whatever the case is? What can we do in that time to really enhance our personal lives? Can we spend more time with family? Can we read more? Can we develop a skill or a hobby or whatever the case is? And so, we have to be intelligent about this. I think number one is football fans. We all have a hand in this. Like I've been saying the whole damn show, put a mask on, please. Just do it. Like we're in a pandemic. But the other thing is, once you realize that this isn't the end of the world, it's an opportunity to take, the 6 hours you would have spent on a Saturday mind-numbingly consuming football, and you invest that time into your community, into your family, into your personal life, into your job to build skill, whatever the case is. And then hopefully on the back end of this, we're sitting back in the spring, maybe enjoying a little bit of spring football, but also better, more well-rounded people because of it.
That's beautiful. Beautifully said.
Better than me saying, at the end of the day, you're still an Ohio State fan, so you got that going for you,
Yeah, no, I was going to say.
Yeah, we can't really say that right now.
No.
That's what we always say. Like when it's obviously in a different light, but when we lost to Clemson, my message was, Andrew asked me the same question. He was like, how can you spin this positively? I was like, well, at least you're an Ohio State fan that gets to root for a team that won the Big Ten championship, is in the playoff, instead of being an Indiana fan, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean, reality of the situation too. If you want to spin it like that, like we're going to be back. Like people are really overreacting. Like I said before, I think it is ridiculous. Some of the takes I'm seeing. Ohio State is going to be back. This is one season. There's one individual season out of our lives too. I think that's the other thing we have to press pause on is, I'm 26 years old. I've watched a ton of football, and into the future, I'm sure I'm going to consume a ton more. So you have 1 year, and it seems so drastic in the moment, but it's 1 year.
It's not even a year, right? It's 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality of the situation. Let's get out of this thing.
Andrew, we're being positive here, man. Good vibes only. It probably is more than a year if you think about it that way, but yeah, exactly.
JP, before we let you go, because this has been phenomenal, got to let you know. So we are now on a new network called the Zedia Network, which I actually started, I own. So if you're looking for a show, we would love to add you to the Zedia Network. You're going to have some time if there's no football. If you want to make the most of it, we'll give you a show.
Let's actually talk about that, because I'm definitely going to be looking for time, and this is your boy's time to pivot. I need to have something to do and a way to channel myself, and I want to stay sharp. So let's make some shit happen. Let's go.
Yeah, we'll schedule a call for the listeners. You might be listening to the beginning of something special, but we'll definitely talk. JP, thanks for coming on. You are killing it with all this. Let's hope that this news cycle gets stretched out as much as it can, so you're on BTN every day.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. Get a little more FaceTime out there, and then I'll adjust to what life becomes in the fall.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you, man. This obviously not the best timing, but it's always a blast talking to you.
No, it's great, fellas. Appreciate you both.
Absolutely.
Thank you.